What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 102 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk to you about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And as we pass the 100 episode mark, we are beginning to bring on some sponsors onto the show, companies and businesses that are really innovating the industry, making our job sites a healthier and cleaner place, making us more efficient, and making our jobs stand out more. Creating technology that's really going to help this industry move forward, become more appealing. And that's why I'm proud to have IQ Power Tools as a sponsor of some episodes coming up here. IQ Power Tools manufactures a comprehensive range of innovative power tools with integrated dust collection systems. Go check them out at iqpowertools.com. and you'll hear more from them in coming episodes. So thank you, IQ Power Tools, for sponsoring these episodes. And today we're joined by Bill Gardocki. He was the owner of Interstate, a landscape, before recently selling it. And this is what we talk about in this episode. Everything from where he started to where he developed his business, what kind of work he took on, as well as the final selling the business and what that was like, what was entailed with that. A lot of great information here from Bill Gardocki. So let's get started. Today, we're joined by Bill Gardocki. He was the owner of Interstate Landscape before recently selling it. That's what we're going to get into a bit today, as well as his background in the industry. And he is also an ICPI and NCMA instructor and a frequent provider of articles for Hardscape Magazine. And he was also the horticultural program instructor at University of New Hampshire. A lot of things to Bill Gardocki. And you might recognize his last name as a previous guest that was on the show. He's done a lot for the industry in terms of instructing, in terms of teaching. Josh Jones of Mass Hardscaper mentioned him on his podcast. So obviously we had to get Bill on the show. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Bill, let's get started with your background in the industry. Where does the story of you entering this industry really start?
Well, back in 1973, I was a sophomore at Norfolk Aggie, which is in Walpole, Mass. And I was a horticulture student and started working for summers for Newport Garden Center in Quincy. And then that became O'Connell Gardens, as Dave O'Connell Sr. bought out the company. And I continued to work for them as a landscape foreman, so to speak. They had a construction crew, very different kind of landscaping, very small lots, as you can imagine, in a city compared to where I am now in southern New Hampshire. But worked for them for 5 years. All through high school and then into college, and then graduated from UNH in 1980 with a degree in horticulture and a degree in ag education, which is led to my career as an ag teacher. So I taught the ag program at Kennett High School in Conway and at Alburn High School in Hudson, New Hampshire. And then in 1987, and I was running my business at the same time. So was a little bit crazy schedule. So I was sneaking into the hallway of the school, calling my guys. This is when we had bag phones. There was no cell phones at that time. So I was sneaking into the hallway to call my foreman at the time to let him know what he should be doing and answering questions, and realize that, I couldn't do both. So in 87, basically left teaching and took over the business full time, or started running the business full time. And just recently, with about 2.5 months ago, sold the business. So that's kind of the history of where it was. So I don't know if you do the math, I think it's about my 48th or 49th year in the industry, something like that.
That is incredible, and quite the story to kind of start to break down here. And congratulations on selling your business. That I'm sure is quite a feat in and of itself, especially in the industry. Bill, when you're going to school then and you've got your own business, did it ever cross your mind that uh, doing your business full time was the what were you doing in terms of getting that education? Do you still feel like that field experience could have given you that education, or was that education really important as well as to become an instructor in the future? Was that kind of did that kind of keep your eyes on the ball in terms of completing that education and going to become an instructor, or did you feel that that education really helped to set you up in terms of a professional in the industry with running your own business? I'm just trying to frame it in my mind because I was also, doing side jobs and going to school at the same time. And at times I thought, like, why am I sitting through these classes when I'm, working on the side and trying to earn that money? What were your thoughts while you were going to school and running your own business?
Right. I think that can definitely be a question. I think that for me, going to college made me grow up, and I learned life skills more than I learned how to lay a paver. But I think all of those things that you learn while you're getting that education come back at some other point in your life. And yes, you can, as I was joking a little while ago, you can train and learn how to lay a paver or how to do grading or anything like that. But it's all those other life skills that I think you learn while you're in college, and just being around other people of similar age and maturity, that I know this doesn't sound right, but I think I can tell a difference in talking with people that have, been through that as opposed to those who have not. I think there is a difference in that. So.
Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple of guys on that talked about that experience with school, and a lot of the guys also mentioned the confidence boost that gave them. That they were going out there with this this background, this professional education, and being able to present that to their clients with confidence. Is that something that you noticed with yourself, or did you already have that with your previous experience and in the industry?
Well, I think the teaching part of it helped a lot, being in front of people and speaking, because there is a definite advantage now that I see, that I have seen others, speaking. So that part of it, I think, definitely helped as far as, that background in that area of expertise. And now I'm able to, relay much easier what we're going to be doing and what vision we're going to be giving the homeowner. So it's made it a little bit easier, I think. Yeah.
So then, Bill, what influences you to then become an instructor? And as we mentioned in the introduction, ICPI, NCMA, as well as the horticultural program instructor. Where does this come into play in terms of your career, your decision to do this, and also be running a business at the same time?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Back when I started teaching ICPI and NCMA classes, I was all gung-ho about, I'm going to change all these contractors to make them understand how important it is to do correct base and how bedding sand and all this other stuff. And I quickly realized that the younger my student was in the certification classes, the better and easier it was to relay information to them that they could carry on. And they were much more willing to follow those types of specifications that ICPI and NCMA was laying out. Guys that had been in the business for a long time, say 15 or 20 years, kind of was set in their ways, and they were going to use stone dust, and they were going to use whatever materials. There wasn't going to be any edge restraint. They weren't going to pay that buck a lineal foot for the edge restraint kind of thing. My pavers stay together. I'm not going to use polysand. That whole thing. And I used to have huge fights with these guys about that. And so it's very interesting. So I went in with a great expectations, that we were going to be able to do all these things. And then my eyes kind of opened. So I realized that if I can just touch 5 or 10% of the people that, take these classes and certification classes, and then they can, install, and I don't even want to say all of ICPI and NCMA's specifications are, God's honest truth, but as long as you can build a project that you feel comfortable and that will stand the test, I always say this, stand the test of time, project that will stand the test of time. Because I will tell you, before I took ICPI and NCMA certification, I had many projects that failed. That's one of my first questions in class is how many of you guys have, had a project that failed? And of course, no one wants to admit that, but, I had projects that failed because I didn't know any better. I didn't know, certain rules that are, you should follow. And that's all we're trying to do is just explain everything to the guys that hopefully that they'll be able to, make correct decisions and not try to shortchange the customer. And that's why I say to people now, when I hear some of these prices, that are being thrown out there, I'm like, how can they be following all of these specifications that the manufacturers recommend and still be charging, $20 a square foot for installation of pavers? That's not possible. You can't make any money doing that. So, one of my big things that I used to say is I'm always trying to get contractors to collude, stand together. Let's raise prices. Let's do things correctly and stand the test of time. And, that's one of the things I really push is that philosophy.
Now, I don't want to put words into Josh Jones's mouth, but I believe he said on our podcast that he learned a big portion of how he charges, how he quotes projects from you. Is this a big part of the program, or is this something that you really want to get out there to people in terms of pricing the projects appropriately so you can take that profit in your business, continue to grow your business, and as you said, raise the industry standard for that pricing?
Yeah, we in all of my classes, whether it be ICPI or NCMA, I use the term, I drop my drawers, and I tell contractors everything. I tell them my prices, I tell them how to price. And we spent in the university classes, we spent a lot of time talking about pricing because, as I say, these kids are spending, the last couple of years, they're spending 35, 40 grand a year to go to school. I want them to get out of these classes with, realistic expectations of what they should be charging, because as I would say to them, you might as well stay home if you're gonna, charge, and not make. You went to school, you're certified, you're whatever. Let's make a living. Let's make a real living. We don't see accountants and lawyers and everybody like that driving piece of junk cars. We need to, make it known that we are a business, we are a viable business, we're business owners. We shouldn't be embarrassed, to tell people that. So, the pricing was a very, very big part of any type of instruction that I do anyway. I want people to realize, and that's, not to say that, when you take a certification class from a manufacturer's rep, you're not going to get that quite the same, I don't think. So that's why I started 20 years ago, and I still say today, take your certification classes from an instructor who's a contractor, because then you'll get the real story.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial too. That is important. And before we hopped on this podcast, I quickly asked you about trends in terms of education. I also want to ask you about trends in terms of hardscaping. So a couple questions here. First one, the trend of students being enrolled in education in this horticultural program. You mentioned that it had been dropping over the years. To what do you attribute this to? Would be the first question. Second question would be, what can we do in this industry as business owners, as you know, manufacturer reps? We got a lot of different people listening to this podcast. We have sales reps, business owners, foremen, dealers. What can we do as an industry as a whole to bring up those numbers? Because you know, those numbers are indicative of what are people going to be coming into the industry, right? And how our industry is getting labor into and to allow us to grow our businesses through that. So first, what were those trends like in education?
Well, I think one of the things that you can see that's really happening now is almost all of the manufacturers are having some type of education program that they put on through the winter. You know, all of the major manufacturers now, you can spend a day, at least one day. This past year was crazy how many educational opportunities people had over the internet, and watching different podcasts like yours, with the companies sponsoring them. So that has really changed. If you think about, I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of Teco, Genest, Cambridge, Nicola. They're all doing their education programs now. That was unheard of 10 years ago, even, you know. So I think as long as contractors realize how important it is, and I hear guys all the time saying, well, you know, I can't afford to go to that because I'd take my guy, you know, he should be washing the trucks that day, you know, or whatever. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, so I think the educational part that the contractors can get from the manufacturers is very, very important. And the manufacturers have gotten better and better and better, because if you remember when they first started, they were really sales pitches. You know, they were trying to sell a product or whatever, sell their new line of whatever. And I think over the last 5 or 6 years, they've realized that the more education they can offer, the better their contractors will be. And by educating guys, and this is another thing that I don't get, is why every manufacturer doesn't have an employee dedicated to going out on a job site and working with contractors and helping them, the way that the guys, I know that Unilock has a guy that specifically goes out, but most of your other companies just have sales reps, and nothing against the sales reps, but you know what their bottom line is? The bottom line is they're trying to sell product. So I've always been a big promoter, and I don't get why some of these companies don't do it, is have a guy that goes out and actually works on a job with a contractor, shows them how to do things. Because I've been in business for a long time, and I've gotten products that came out and they were new, and I'm like, this is Latin to me, you know, like, how do I install this? So I think that would be really important. You know, having somebody working with the contractor. But I digress. To get back to your point, I think anything that the contractors can do to help, and almost all of these programs that are offered during the winter are free. It doesn't cost them anything. So, you know, you get a free lunch, you get a few, you know, they give out a few prizes here and there, whatever. But I think that's a really important thing, and to take that time to schedule that time is so valuable to learn about new products, and then that way you get to ask questions as well. What was your second question?
Definitely. So that was great. And I've always been a big supporter of those suppliers that put on those educational programs, then give back to the industry. I really like giving my money and supporting those manufacturers that do that. I just want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, IQ Power Tools. They manufacture a comprehensive range of innovative power tools with integrated dust collection systems. The company, founded by third-generation Masons, began creating tools to solve their own dust problems, only to realize the same issues affected all contractors. These power tools are going to help keep your job site clean, safe, healthy for your workers. There's so many benefits that go into these dust collection systems for hardscapers, for us in our industry. Today, the firm brings to market award-winning power tools that increase job site efficiency and overall safety. Their national War on Dust tour begins this summer, so go visit them at iqpowertools.com to see when they'll be in your neighborhood. Now back to our episode. Now, with that being said, the labor force obviously is a big thing these days, and you did mention that the horticultural program saw a decreasing trend of students enrolling in it. What can we do as an industry to make this more appealing for more people to see this as a future, as a career? Because it is an incredible place to be, an industry to be a part of. And how do we highlight those incredible parts of the industry to get more people excited about joining it and a career in it?
Well, I think my eyes actually have been opened a little bit in the last few months in the sale process of my business. I take, for example, the company that I sold to just bought a piece of equipment, and it was $90,000. And I bought the same piece of equipment in 2004 that was $45,000. So I think that the days of guys just jumping into it are slowing. And I think because of the cost, and my eyes were opened, as I say, in trying to sell my business, I realized that you really needed to invest almost $500,000 just to start a business. You need a mini excavator, you need a skid steer, you need a truck, you need a trailer, and then you're going to rent a facility every month. So it's not a small investment. So I think by working for a few years, getting your feet wet, getting to really understand the industry really helps. And you're honest to God, your guess is as good as mine as far as where we're going to find these people. It's going to take a different change or a different philosophy, a change of philosophy, however you want to describe it. Because again, as I said, parents don't see their kids getting into this field. They don't think that it's, honorable enough or something for their children. So they're really pushing them, go to a 4-year college, get your degree in accounting or business or whatever. So it's a real battle. And I think that the manufacturers are starting to realize this, because everything you see now coming from them is, opportunities like I was just talking about, with the education, and they're understanding that, they've got to help in the process of continuing this business, that the manufacturers they're living large right now. So they want to make sure they continue that, trend. And so that's one of the things that you're seeing is, the manufacturers really starting to pick up the pace on the education part.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a long-term goal of this platform is to, get that out there, show the amazing sides of this industry to get people excited about joining the hardscape industry. Now, in terms of away from education, in terms of trends in the hardscape industry, whether that's on site, whether that's in business that you saw over your many years owning and operating a business, Bill, what are some of the trends that you've seen in terms of hardscaping, in terms of tools, equipment, on-site building, whatever you want to get into, installation? What are some of the biggest trends that you've seen, products that have come available on the market from your very start to the industry to now? What have been some of those trends that have really blown you away?
Well, I think the biggest trend to me is in the tools. Just to think of, Phil Baylor and some of the other companies that are out there now selling tools, is that just wasn't available. My guys laugh at me when I tell them, geez, when I started, I used to lift with one other guy. We used to lift 4-foot granite steps into place. I wouldn't even think in the last 10 years, I wouldn't even think of asking two of my strongest muscle men to do that. So the tools in the industry, and I think that what we're seeing is, that companies are understanding that they're not going to be able to hire as many people. I was talking to one guy up in the Lakes region, normally has 80 employees, last year had 30. So it's a big, big issue. So any tool that you can buy, and I've tried telling this to my students in every level of class that I've ever taught, anything that you can buy that saves one or two people, buy it. And that's, again, the issue comes back to the issue of, investment of dollars. But to save people's backs, fingers, and knees is a huge part of what I was trying to encourage people to do. So we had, my company had every single tool that you can think of. We were probably one of the first companies to have suction tools for lifting and placing. We were the first to have clamps. We started with clamps, and then we went to suction tools. And as soon as any type of tool became available, we would try it. I would say to my guys, we'd go to H&A or would go to New England Grows in Boston, and I'd say to them, okay, your goal here is to each come back and recommend one particular item. That's like your assignment. I'll pay for you to get in the door. Your assignment is to come back and show and tell me one thing. So I would say, okay, well, at this show, we want to buy a new edge restraint, and we want to buy it in bulk. At this show, we want to look at clamping tools. At this show, we want to look at this. And so when you go to these shows, whether it be the show this year in Hartford or H&A or wherever, I highly encourage that you're there on a mission. It's not just fun. You're there to look at new products and potentially, purchase something that looks good, because at these shows you can get your best pricing. So one of the biggest trends that I've seen over the last few years is, people wanting to have like an outdoor living space, whether it be, putting in some sort of outdoor grill or a fire pit or whatever. So that's probably the biggest trend I see, is that now, for years we were just doing patios, but now it's a patio with a feature. So what I was doing the last few years that I was in business was I was always adding those items, even if the homeowner didn't ask for them. I was adding them as a separate line item to my quote, and say, and we had, I don't know, it was about a 10 or 12% upsell, because I was adding those prices, whether it be lighting, night lighting, or a water feature, or grill, whatever it was, a seat wall. Seat walls are huge. So we were adding those separate line item, and people hadn't even thought about it. So you're giving people, an idea. And one thing that I would do is I would ask people to look at our website before I showed up to do the quote, to try to, give them an idea of what we do as far as getting their juices flowing, with what we do. And one thing I never did on a website is I never used manufacturers' photos. I always use my own photos, my own jobs. We actually, and Tom would be able to tell you this because he spoke to many different people about this. We actually had some of our photos used by others, and kind of them saying that they did the work, but Tom would always put a quick end to that. But I found that to be a very, very good sales tool. And here's the other thing that I do as well for sales is I would say on 95% of jobs, maybe even more than that, I don't leave without giving the homeowner a quote. Homeowners are blown away by the fact that I will give them a quote on site, so to speak, and that they will have a price instead of me having to go back to the office and do everything, put it on paper, It's on paper, and it's not that formal. It's all to scale and everything. But I won't hardly ever leave a job without giving the homeowner a price. So many people have told me over the years that they've had visits by other contractors and then they never heard from them again. So it's one of those things where, you go home, you got your wife yakking in one ear, you got the kids crying, you got to feed them and whatever, and you kind of forget where you were. But generally speaking, we'll give a price the same time we're there at that time. So
that's interesting. If I've got a few questions for you, and I do want to get into you selling your business, so take as much time as you want with these next couple. But you've been in business through a lot of interesting periods. One of which I want to ask you is the development of websites for businesses. Were you one of the early adopters of creating a website for your business, and what effect did that have on your business? And continuing with that, did you see other businesses in your area reluctant to start a website, to get on the internet, to use that to their advantage? And what effect did that have on their businesses? Can you speak a little bit about, the industry adopting the internet as a whole to be able to leverage their marketing and to get to the next step with getting clients?
Well, the whole thing I would say about that is I am completely computer illiterate. So I have left Tom, my son, to do that. He started, developed, created, whatever you want to call it, our website. People rave about our website. They say we had one of the best websites ever. I just kind of gave him a little bit of direction and he drove the bus and created that. So we have not done any advertising in over 15 years. So we don't do yellow pages in newspapers or anything like that. We only have our website. And I actually, as part of the sale, I'm working, I'll get into this, I'm sure, but I'm working doing sales for the company that I sold. And I'd say two people this week told me that we had a great website because the company bought my name, bought the name of my company. So not a lot has changed yet. So I think that the clearer you can be with your website as to what you do and what you offer is critical. And one thing we're able to do on our website is show literally dozens and dozens of jobs that we've done, and we've broken the categories down into walls, patios, 5 or 6 or 7 different categories, and people can go on and spend hours on our website. And I can't tell you, I'd say at least 75% of my potential customers say, "Oh, I want a patio just like on your website you did the Joneses or whatever." And so it's been, I can't tell you how helpful that has been. And one other thing that really helped us was we had our own display area. So we got the manufacturers that we use. We said, "Hey, we're going to display your products," because one thing I don't want is I don't want the homeowners going to their locations because they're going to see 10 other trucks with names on them parked there. "Oh, why don't I get an estimate from this one and that one," and so forth. So as soon as I know when a homeowner comes to our location, to our showroom, I know I've kind of got them and can really sell them on product. And don't forget, I sell labor. I don't sell product. Okay. I let them choose a product and I will get it. And I have a small markup, about 25% on product, but I'm not selling product. So if someone says to me, "Well, I want to use X product instead of Y product," I'll say, "Well, that's only an extra $2 a square foot, $3, because I'm already doing all of the prep work the same way anyway." So whatever product they choose, I don't really care, to be quite honest, and I never get involved in choosing colors. I'll make suggestions, but I don't push colors. I let the homeowner choose the color that they want. So it's been a big advantage having that ability to have the showroom. Our website, as I say, Tom built the website. He does all of the maintenance of it, or I should say did all the maintenance of it. And so that was huge. And in the last 15 years, I'd say the website's been really, really helpful.
And Bill, I could sit here all day talking to you. So I'm sorry if we drag on a bit here, but there are a couple things I want to get through, including operating through recessions. This, I think, is a big topic because in my personal belief, I think we're more than due for something to happen in the market. And with what's happened in the economy for the past couple of years, I figure it's going to be something big. But that's not financial advice for anyone. Bill, what was it like operating through recessions? What advice can you give to guys out there in terms of how you operated during a recession, how you survived through a recession? Can you provide any general advice for that?
No. Because during the last recession, which was during 2008, I believe, we were busy. We were booked for the whole season.
Incredible.
So I think it's I don't know. It's one of those things where you do a fair job, you give them a good price, you have a relationship. All of my customers are my friends. I'm not in an adversarial relationship with any of them. The jobs may have gotten a little bit smaller. Our average job is probably $15,000 to $20,000. Back then, it was probably maybe it was $5,000 to $10,000. I can't even remember. But we to basically answer your question, we have not had a slowdown in 40 years. So it's a little bit different.
Do you attribute that to just being prepared and having, like, how far did you keep a buffer in terms of being booked going into a season and then during a season?
generally speaking, back then it was probably about 6 weeks. Now we're booking now for October, which is, well out there, and I'm booking 2 crews. So, that's a little bit different for me. For the last 45 years, basically, I've had what I call my prep crew, which would be Tom going out ahead, getting everything prepped. So my install crew did not prep, and I found that to work great. Tom would be ahead with his crew, and his crew started with him and 2 people. Then it went to him and 1 person because of the technology. We didn't need another, boots on the ground person. And then the last year or so, he's been doing a lot of the prep work by himself. He prepped an 800 square foot patio last year for me in 1 day by himself because of all the technology that he had. So, this year's a little bit different, but as long as you do quality work, if you do quality work and don't have those little petty things pop up, oh, he owes me for another yard of loam. He owes me for, 10 more square feet. If you let those things slide, honestly, make it up on the next job, make it up on the next quote. You'll always have that relationship with the people that will be more than happy to give you a referral.
Bill, you've sold your company, and this is something that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on. What was it like selling a hardscape company? Because I'm sure lots of people are interested in this topic, this subject alone. Was it more than just selling the equipment? Like what goes into deciding to sell a hardscape company, understanding what assets the company has and what the company is actually worth? Can you speak a little bit about the process in selling your business?
Sure. Well, as you may or may not know, we have been told that there have not been many companies, hardscape companies, to just sell their name. So we spent last fall, late fall, after the season, and we inventoried all of our equipment, took all of our equipment and put price tags on it, had a sale, and we were able to sell 95% of all of our equipment and tools. We had pallets of poly sand, we had pieces of granite, we sold everything. So then, probably in February or so, our son Tom said, "Mom, Dad, why don't you try to sell the name?" And we said, "Well, we have never heard of that before. I've never heard of anyone selling the name of a hardscape company." He says, "I think I can do it." So we put the word out, so to speak, and sure enough, we found a company. Well, after we tried to sell it to one of our employees, but as what we were talking about earlier is he didn't have the money to do the investment in equipment. He had some equipment, but not all that he needed. So it was just going to be too expensive. So we found a company that has been in business for 10 years, and they did mainly maintenance, mowing, and wanted to expand into the hardscaping field. And we were able to hammer out a deal with them. It took a while, but we were able to come up with a price. We hired, not hired, but we consulted with the Harvest Group, which is an industry group that helps people in many different ways. We consulted with someone in this area who's got a very large business. And the consensus was that we were crazy because no one had ever sold just a name before of a business, at least not in this area. So we came up with a price that was 3 times what was recommended to us. for sale, because we had decided that, we had a price in mind and we weren't going to go below that. And sure enough, I can't even remember that there was any discussion to try to negotiate a lower price from the current owners. They were more interested in having me work 10 hours a week doing the sales for them. So that's what I'm doing now, is the sales for the new company. Last week I put in almost 40 hours, I will tell you, though, because we're just so busy. It's just unbelievably busy. But I really, really found that I love this part of it. I didn't think that I was going to want to do sales. I literally put the word out that I would drive a flower delivery truck and deliver flowers or whatever, but I really like the sales end of it. I like meeting with the clients. So it's just, the frustrating part is just dealing with employees who literally know very little about what they're doing. So I'm really in the training mode as well, which is fun too. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that, I want it done basically the way that I used to do it. And so, like any other previous owner, that's the difficult part is training people to do things the way that you want to. The beautiful thing is that the new owner is willing to learn. They want to know everything. They're like a sponge. So it's been going, very, very well as far as that goes.
That does make sense that a maintenance company wanting to get into this side of things would be interested in that. And purchasing the name is interesting in and of itself. I guess a lot of that has to do with the word of mouth referrals that come in because of that name, the goodwill that your business has established in the community. I'm sure that those aspects have a lot to do in terms of pricing that company name and that company willing to be purchasing that for it, right?
That's absolutely correct. It's been the 48 years of previous goodwill. And that's what we sold, was goodwill. And I'm in the Rotary Club, I'm in the Chamber of Commerce, so people know me. They feel comfortable with me, apparently. And I don't think that this year, even though I've been scheduling for 2 crews, I don't think there's one customer who has said, well, can you do it for a little bit less? And I'm talking in March, I did 64 quotes in that 1 month. So, people are, and I look at my jobs to do file, and I probably close, I pat myself on the back, I probably close 75 to 80% of my jobs quotes that I do. So that's why we've been able to have 2 crews, booked through October now, or into October. So I'm hoping to really get down to about 5 hours a week of work here pretty soon.
Bill, do you think if your company was named after your name, like Bill's Landscaping or whatever, that you would be able to sell it for the same amount or even sell it? I
don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's funny that you say that, because when I first started in 1973, I had a little Ford Maverick, and I pulled a trailer, and it was called Bill's Landscape. And but I don't know. I would not be able to answer that question, but I would hope that I would still, have a good following of clients at that point. But like I say, the biggest thing right now is the referrals. It's just, having a good relationship, making people happy no matter what. And, like I say, don't be so intent on making, 20, 25, 30% on job X, when on the next few jobs, you can make that up and still keep everybody happy. Don't burn bridges over one job.
So, Bill, really quickly, I've got short questions here for you. Right now in the business, where are the most of the referral or the leads coming from? Are they word of mouth referrals? Are they through the websites? Where do you find the most of the leads are coming from?
I think it's probably 75% from word of mouth and 25% from the website.
Having set up a business and then coming to the point of selling it, is there any tip, any advice that you'd want to give somebody who is setting up their business right now? How would you set up that business to be able to sell it in the future? Is there anything that you can give in terms of general advice to establish yourself and set yourself up to one day being able to sell that company name?
Well, just, the only bit of advice that I would have is be straight with your clients. Don't bullshit them. It could, because people are very smart today. They understand, when you're telling them what to do, what you're telling them to do is correct or incorrect. Get as much education as you possibly can. I go to every free seminar there is. I am still learning today. After 48, 49 years in the industry, I still learn stuff every single time that I go. And that's my goal, is I always go with an open mind and a goal to always learn at least one or two things from every seminar. So as long as you, and I don't even want to say you have to be an honest person, but as long as you keep an open mind and let people make decisions, let your potential clients make decisions, and have a two-way street, things will always, or almost always, work out. I find that, and I'm finding this with the new owner of my company, it takes a special kind of contractor to do $150,000 jobs. I really, really, really like the $20,000 job. The people are so happy to have it done. It's easy to get paid when you're done. They're not asking you to do a million different little things for free because they feel like, oh my God, 150,000, this guy's getting rich. So, give me the $20,000 3-day job, in and out, bing, bang, boom. I'll take that over the $150,000 job any day, because it's so much easier to schedule when you're doing, it's a little bit more work scheduling, but it's so much easier to schedule, dealing with that now. So that's the advice I would give. Be honest, be open. Don't try to hide things, and do smaller jobs.
I agree. I also set up my business for very similar price range in terms of the projects that I take on. Great advice. I have the final question for you, Bill. It's a question that I ask every business owner that comes on the show. I know you just recently sold your business, but I'm still going to ask you this, and feel free to take this any way you want, whether it's business, personal, financial, whatever it might be. But I ask everybody that comes on the show that's a business owner, what is that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very start? Whether that's the start of your business, the start of whatever, take it any direction you want. But what is that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very start?
Well, I think comes back to kind of what my wife has taught me about running a business, is know your overhead and know your costs, what it costs you to be in business every year. And, she would spend hours and hours and hours during the winter running down costs. And as soon as you know what it costs to run your business, then you can decide, okay, well, I want to make 10%. I want to make 20%. I want to make 30%. And then you know how to price jobs. You have to know your costs to be in business.
Bill, it's been such a pleasure to be able to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thank you.
Bill, where can our audience learn more about you? Where can they find you online? Where can they reach out to you if you want to give that information out? What do you want to leave our audience with?
Well, if they are on a jet ski in the middle of Lake Winnipesaukee this summer, they can find me. But other than that, they can't find me. So that's it.
That is absolutely you. Thank you so much for what you've given back to the industry with articles, in being an instructor. So I just want to thank you for that, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Visit us at howtohardscape.com for more information on this subject, and let us know what you want to learn about in future episodes by reaching out to us. We're at How to Hardscape on Instagram and Facebook. And while you're at it, go check out IQ Power Tools on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can find them, and visit them on iqpowertools.com to see when they are going to be visiting your neighborhood with their War on Dust tour this summer. And give them a thank you, shout them out, and go check out their lineup of power tools with integrated dust collection systems that'll keep your job site clean, healthy, and safe for you, your crew, and your clients. We look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.